Who was my favorite cast member? Oh man, you're gonna make me choose. Lewis was definitely my favorite cast member. Nothing against anybody else, but super cool dude. The guy that plays Sentry, Bob, excellent human being, super chill, super down to earth. Was really down to train and get as good as humanly possible to represent the character. And was just a bro, man. Like the first day he walked in, it was like he was ready to rock and roll. He was down to do stuff. He was cool to train and worked really, really, really hard. And he was like self-professed. He was like, I don't do stuff like this, man. I don't do fight scenes, and I haven't done many things like this. I didn't really grow up playing sports. And, but he was like a sponge, man. He really, really came in and worked his ass off. And, his double Alec Back is a good friend of mine, and was super, super instrumental in, helping him kind of, get his, I don't want to say get his feet dirty, get his feet wet, get up to speed. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, but Lewis was definitely my favorite. Really rad dude, and super, super nice guy. He also crushed it, by the way. His performance, especially, I mean, honestly, the entire thing, he crushed the entire movie. It was amazing. What was really cool about that too was that when you're working on a project like this, especially in the capacity of stunts, like I don't see a lot of the acting, like I see the acting as it pertains to before or after the fights, or not even after, but before a fight. So like we'll get called to set when there's about to be a fight, or if there's a fight scene on the day, and that's when you kind of get to see, the acting play out, because otherwise we're rehearsing or we're setting up other stuff. And so you miss a lot of like the story driven parts of the filming because we're needed in other places and things like that. And also it's such a slow process that, you might see a line here or there, you might see like a full sequence getting shot, but out of context, it's just kind of like, cool, yeah, they're acting. But then when you see the whole thing come together, it was just like, damn, Lewis crushed it. Like he was like, 10 out of 10 performance. I thought he did amazing. Probably just the scale and being in multiple places at once, meaning as production starts and you start working on the movie, you have to be on set because you're helping the actors perform and you're helping them with the choreo and stuff like that. You're making changes and, calling audibles on the day. Whenever something doesn't work, you have to rebuild choreography, or you have to help with the whole thing come together. And in the meantime, you're still prepping the next scenes that are going to happen in the future, like future fights and things that haven't been covered yet, or things that haven't been approved, or things that haven't been totally choreographed. So that's where the team comes in. I had a really great fight team. My good buddy Trevor Morgan, Anish Sherfa, Matt Emig, all super superstars, and so they help carry a lot of that load whenever, as well as the other part of the team and the doubles and things like that, help carry that heavy part of the load whenever I was on set and things like that, help choreograph and come up with cool concepts and things like that, so that whenever I was available, then we could go over things together and then shoot the previs and stuff like that. So I would say the hardest part is juggling all those plates, keeping up with what the actors are doing on the day, and also keeping track of the concepts and the fights that are coming up and things like that as the shoot goes on. So I have worked on Thunderbolts. I've worked on Hawkeye, the series. I got to second unit stunt double Jeremy Renner. That was a really, really dope experience. I worked on Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and then this wasn't a Marvel property at the time. It was Sony technically. Well, I think it was like split ownership, Sony and Marvel. Wow, I just brain farted. Spider-Man, No Way Home. That was the first kind of Marvel thing that I worked on, and then it was Guardians 3? Hawkeye? No, Hawkeye. Yeah, because I went Spider-Man, then Hawkeye, then Guardians 3, and then Thunderbolts a few years later. A big personal lesson that I learned is that you're never going to feel ready to do something, and so you just have to go for it. Like you literally just have to. I wrote a newsletter about this last week, which was that if you're pushing yourself and you're pushing your ability, then you're always going to live in this state of discomfort, and it's never going to get easier because your opportunities grow with you. So like this was I had an opportunity last year or 2 years ago to fight coordinate Ballerina, which is coming out next month. in the John Wick universe. And that was a huge challenge, big shoes to fill, crazy franchise, heavy fights, stuff like that. But it was one character, so it was a little bit easier to digest in terms of like scope, I guess. And then whenever I got introduced to this film and I was potentially going to be the fight coordinator of this one, it was like, now you have 5 superheroes, you have all this stuff. So like fight coordinator, yes, same job, but the scope was completely bigger movie, bigger franchise, like bigger everything. So even though I had already done the job, I was still like very uncomfortable. So I think a personal lesson that I learned on this is that as you grow, so do your opportunities. So in order to continue progressing, you just have to get comfortable with the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable, and you have to get comfortable with the fact that sometimes you just have to say yes and figure things out as you go along. And so that was a huge personal lesson that I learned. And then I would say a craft lesson that I learned, which was a moment with Jake, the director, in our rehearsal space after we had taken a stab at a previs a few different times. And we were kind of trying to circle the runway a little bit and kind of come up with something that he liked as far as in terms of shooting. And he wanted this scene specifically shot in a really specific way. And, you know, when you're shooting stuff, you tend to let your own style bleed into things. So I do a lot of orbiting shots, a lot of really crazy gimbal moves and things like that. And he really didn't want that for this. And a lot of times when we're shooting fights, we tend to focus on the moves. Like, I want to see the punch, I want to see the stab, I want to see the thing. He finally found a way to kind of convey that idea by saying, for this fight particularly, I'm not really as concerned about the moves as I am being like right here on her face so that I can see what she's experiencing as she goes through this fight. And I was like, holy shit, that's like a very, very specific note, but super powerful in the sense of like, that is storytelling. Like, I don't care about the fighting. I care about what, and he did not care about the fighting, but like he was like not as concerned about the karate and like what specific moves we were doing, which is what I tend to get stuck on sometimes. And he was more about like, I want to see what Florence is experiencing as a character in this sequence. And so from there on out, I was like, damn, that is like a really intelligent way to approach shooting a fight scene. Because as much as we want to think that it's about the choreography, it's about the story. And that's how you tell a story, is through an actor's performance. So that was a huge professional lesson that I learned. It's really hard to say. I don't know. They were all fun for different reasons. I think Guardians 3 was a blast to work on because I got to know some people that I'm now extremely close to friend-wise, and we had a lot of really funny, silly times on that movie. It was a long one. That was a long one. The suits were crazy that we had to wear and stuff. I think Thunderbolts has to be my favorite just because of the role that I got to fill in the movie as far as fight coordinating. I feel like I definitely love to perform as a stuntman, but like I've sort of started to outgrow that position, only in the sense of like, I feel like I'm a filmmaker at heart. And so a lot of times when I'm just performing, I feel like I'm a little underutilized because I really like to contribute creatively as much as I possibly can. I mean, ultimately one day I'd like to direct. And so fight coordinating, you're ultimately kind of directing your own little fight unit. Not necessarily, well, sometimes, I mean, not in terms of like directing, you know, the crew and the camera and stuff like that. But like when it comes to fights, especially on Thunderbolts, which was really rad, Jake would like hand it over to me. He would just be like, cool, man, you know, get them ready, do your thing, like rehearse. We would rehearse them. We would get them up to speed. We would do warm-ups and things like that. And then I would step in if they started to have trouble or if a punch started looking weird on camera. I mean, Jake would be really cool about like, hey, can you go, you know, tell them how to fix that and stuff. So then you are kind of miniaturely directing in a weird way, because you're not directing like an actor's like acting performance, but you're directing their physical performance. So I got to do a lot of that on Thunderbolts, and that's kind of what makes it my favorite, because ultimately I would like to direct, and being able to get a tiny little taste of that on such a massive scale is pretty sick. I mean, there's a couple. So kind of kicking back to what I said a minute ago, there was a time in the finale fight when Bob is fighting Dark Bob in the lab, where that was one of the last things we shot in principal photography. I think it might have been the last thing that we shot in Atlanta before we went to Utah. So by that point, everybody's in a flow. Everybody knows kind of, you know, the roles on the movie and things like that. Meaning, you know, in the first week or so, you're the fight coordinator. You start pitching ideas and things, and people are just kind of like, who the fuck is this guy, you know? Versus the end, you know, people know who you are and kind of respect your position and stuff like that. So in terms of cool moments, there was a moment, like I said, Jake being really cool about, and my boss, Heidi, being really cool about allowing me to, you know, help fix things when it comes to fights and things like that. There was a moment in the lab fight where, you know, Lewis was about to warm up or whatever. And so Jake kind of handed it over to me, said, hey, go ahead and get him ready or do whatever you need to do, rehearse the fight or whatever. And so it's literally like me and the actor and the double and the whole set, like watching us do this rehearsal. And me kind of driving the pace of that, being like, okay, cool, let's go, action. And then showing the scene, like, okay, cool, on this next one, I want you to do this and this. And like really like getting hyper specific about trying to bring out the best performance possible. But doing that while the entire crew is like kind of paused and they're just allowing you the space to do that. And then kind of having the idea that like, holy shit, this is a Marvel movie and this is something that you really wanted to do your entire like teenage and like, you know, 20s whenever you're watching movies in the theater, and like now you're doing it. That was a really cool moment to have and kind of be aware of. That was one. And then number two is, so the first iteration of the movie, meaning before we went on strike, I was actually the assistant fight coordinator. So originally there was a guy, Sean Aiden, who was the original fight coordinator, and he was potentially going to go off to a different show and blah, blah, blah. And then that ended up happening, which is why when we came back, I ended up being the fight coordinator. So I was his assistant, and he was working on another piece. And so we were going to go shoot a previs inside one of the stages, or we thought that's what we were doing. And when we walked in, it was the director, the DP, and I think one or two of the producers, as well as some of the like other department heads, like set deck and things like that. And we were kind of like surprised. We were like, hello, what's going on? We're going to shoot this previs on the set so that we could really kind of, you know, hammer this thing out. Cause it was the corridor shot at the very beginning of the movie where it's like a top shot and it's tracking down the corridor. And they were like, oh no, we want to see what you guys have come up with. And I had like a loose idea in my head that I had choreographed in the rehearsal space, like literally like an hour or two before this. And I was the only one that had anything in mind because, like I said, we were kind of dispersed. I was working on one thing and the original fight coordinator was working on another thing. And so everybody just kind of looked to me like to just start talking. And I was just like, okay. And then I just started vamping, like completely improv, pulling stuff out of my ass. And I basically whispered to like the girl that doubles Florence. I was like, just roll with me for a second. And so I was just like literally like really subtly giving cues to like our stunt team and like the guys that were working on the film to like do certain things, like, all right, now spin around. Okay, now go against the wall. You're dead, doing all these little motions, and literally kind of choreograph this fight on the spot with like a blended version of the ideas that I had in the rehearsal space, and then just improvising things that were coming to me like literally in real time as I was showing this off. And at the end of it, Jake was just kind of like, that's cool. They shouldn't come from that direction though. And then literally just like waited for me to like make adjustments. So I made like another adjustment. And then in like 10 minutes, he was like, great. And he was like, that looks good. I like it. Shoot it. And it was like the easiest fight in terms of like prepping a fight and getting it approved because we just did it right in front of him and just pulled it off. So anyway, that was like a really memorable moment to me because I think up until that point, I was very in my head as to whether or not I was ready for a job like this, and I was ready for a job of this caliber. And being able to just kind of do that under pressure, come up with something, have it work out, and then get it like approved like that was like, okay, like I'm in the right spot. Like I can do this job. So that was probably the most memorable moment of the film for me. That fight specifically in the penthouse was actually heavily storyboarded. So honestly, just being straight up, there wasn't a lot for us to choreograph in that sense. We choreographed pieces around it, but whenever it gets into the big, that big oneer where the camera's craning up and doing all these crazy things, that was basically like a comic book strip that they designed around storyboards that the director and the storyboard artist had come up with. So a lot of those gags and things like that were preset, and then the stunt team and our amazing rigging team and our amazing stunt coordinator were responsible for pulling off those wire gags. There were pieces before and after that big oneer that we did. There's the part where Winter Soldier starts teeing off on Sentry and stuff like that. I was involved in all of that stuff. I was involved in the entire shooting of that sequence, as far as helping Lewis to pull off his motions in a way that, because a lot of this is not just choreographing. Very few. It's funny because like I feel like in the stunt world, especially among my peers, like I think the misconception is that like fight coordinating is all about choreography, and really it has a lot to do with helping an actor be prepared and look good when they're doing things. And so yeah, I was heavily involved in all that stuff. Every fight, every time you see someone throwing a punch, it's pretty much something that I was involved with. It depends on the coordinator, but in this case, Heidi would kind of break down, show me the scene. We would break it down, kind of talk about it, and she would kind of give me. She comes from a fight heavy background. She actually is Black Widow, which is pretty badass from all the original Marvel films. So she's got a really gigantic fight background, amazing ideas and things like that. So she would usually give me kind of a scope of like, hey, I kind of been thinking something like this, and then from there, the fight team. We get together with the fight team and the doubles, and we basically kind of break off into little groups and conceptualize different pieces. So like group A is choreographing something, group B is choreographing something, I'll be choreographing something with another group. After an hour or so or 30 minutes or whatever, we'll kind of reconvene. They generally show me like, here's what we came up with, and I'm like, here's what I came up with. And then so ultimately you kind of become a curator of the pieces of the fight and kind of pull the best from each idea and try to make, a cohesive piece about it. And then after that, we shoot it. So we shoot it like we think the movie could be shot, in terms of like, I'll take like one of these little cameras, like this guy right here on the little gimbal. I'll take that camera and then we shoot the fight. We shoot it like, like we think it would look good. If we were shooting the movie and we were directing the movie, we shoot it like that. And then after that, we edit it together. We cut in sound effects and VFX and things like that, things that, might help sell the idea better. And then after it's done, I submit it to the stunt coordinator for approval. And then if she approves it, she'll present it to the director and the producers, and then they give their feedback, and then we make adjustments based on that feedback. Sometimes we choreograph, sometimes we revise, sometimes we reshoot, sometimes it's all three. And then we just keep doing that over and over until it lands in a place where the stunt coordinator's happy and the director is happy. And so that's how it's presented. So ultimately, I shoot it, I cut it together, or our team cuts it together, present it to the stunt coordinator. Once she's happy with it, she would run it up the flagpole and then see what they think, and then make adjustments, and then move on from there. Long-winded answer to a short question. Honestly, it's really cool from a filmmaking standpoint because you kind of get to learn by process of elimination what different directors like, and then it kind of helps you, to develop your own style, and you get a ton of reps. I mean, there's nothing like shooting things over and over again, shooting sequences over and over again, then seeing how it's shot on the day from different directors, like some of the biggest directors in the world, and then seeing it kind of come together and then going, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of shooting it that way. And then the next time you go to shoot a preview, you're like, I'm going to do what Christopher Nolan did. That was pretty sick. So it's pretty neat place to be as far as being able to learn and, kind of absorb things from like some of the best creators in the industry. It's pretty sick. Funniest memory on set? It's hard on this set. David Harbour's hilarious. He's not just funny in the movie. He's actually a very funny dude. He's also gigantic. So like the fact that he's funny is really nice, because otherwise he's very scary because he's massive. I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head that I thought was really funny. I don't know. I think just watching him act is pretty funny because his character's hilarious. So anytime he's like doing stuff, he's the comic relief of the movie. Those are pretty funny moments. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that was a funny memory though, specifically. I always say this. I feel like there's a bar that you have to be at in terms of performance. Like you have to be above this one level, and you have people that are above this level, and then you have the best performers in the industry, and they're up here. And then what separates them is this like middle ground, right? That isn't necessarily what makes you a great stunt performer, in my opinion, because while you might be a great performer, maybe you're a shitty team player, You know what I mean? Oh, it just thumbs up to everybody. Maybe you're not a good team player. Maybe you're really hard to be around. Maybe we don't want to, be around you for 9 months in a row because you're an asshole, because, you're at that upper echelon of performance. And so you think you can do whatever the fuck you want. It depends on what way you're asking, because a good performer that's above the bar of like minimum performance, meaning, and by minimum performance, I mean, you're an excellent performer. The difference in that and someone that's like the best performer honestly just comes down to hyper specificity, being able to do a very specific skill like really well. But honestly, you don't even need that. You don't need to be the best performer there is out there, more than you need to be someone that the team wants around, that contributes, that has creative ideas. I mean, ultimately, like as a fight coordinator, if I have to say what I want in a team specifically, and what we were blessed with on this team, is like people that pull their weight in terms of like, they make your job easier. Like, so the guys that were on the fight team that I was able to kind of bring in and like be a part of my like kind of like wish list are guys that like take weight off my shoulders, are like willing to help me shoot stuff, willing to help me choreograph stuff, willing to help me train an actor whenever I've got to do other things. So it's like wearing many hats, in my opinion, makes you a great stunt person. And it's not as much about like being a great performer. I mean, I hate to say that. It is about being a great performer. But I would say like what separates, I feel like the question behind the question is like, what makes you have a successful career? I could be wrong. But what it sounds like the question behind the question is like, what makes a successful career over just, kind of here and there. And I would say that aspect. That was a really long-winded answer. If you're talking about specific performance, I would say, people that can hit their mark every time, work really hard, are well-versed in many disciplines if possible. So if you are a fight person, rather than just being able to do kicks, you can do a lot of things. You're like a chameleon. You can adapt to scenarios. And then being able to perform in terms of like acting and like, embodying a character is also another really, really, important thing to make a great performer. In terms of like career success and like being able to stand out in your career, it's all of the other shit that I said before. Being able to have that bar and be able to be above that bar of like, this is what is a good performer. And then the icing on the cake of that is like, how are you to work with? How do you work hard? Do you take pressure off people that are, in hot spots? Do you come up with solutions on the fly when someone is stuck? Like those are all really, really important things to me in terms of like, wanting someone to be around or be on the team. I've actually done some acting a little bit. I actually started off as an actor. So there's a movie called Happy Death Day. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like where it's like a Groundhog Day. The movie, the day keeps on repeating itself, and she keeps dying and trying to find out who's killing her. From like 2016, maybe 2017, and then there was a sequel, and I was in both of those movies. I was in a couple TV shows on ABC and things like that. And then I've done a couple little stunt acting parts. So there's a movie coming out in June called Ballerina, and I did an stunt acting role in that. I think that character might have gotten cut if I saw it on the rough cut of it, just because it didn't really keep the story. They kind of did a bunch of reshoots and things like that, but originally I was cast in that. So yeah, and definitely open to it. I'm always looking. I started out doing that, so I feel like I have a kind of a leg up when it comes to if they need someone to do action and perform an acting scene at the same time. I'm usually got an advantage because I'm super comfortable delivering lines and being on camera and things like that. So other skill sets for stunts to help a stunt. Yeah, so I mean, being able to shoot is really helpful. Like being able to shoot previs, being able to edit, being able to do visual effects or sound design. All of those things are super helpful. A lot of people, you can't talk about stunts without talking about rigging. So if you're, if you're less interested in being a performer, but have a knack for, understanding mechanics and things like that, rigging is a path for stunts, and they're instrumental in what we do, and they're all stunt people as well. So those are all good skills to have. And then as a performer, it's also good to know at least a little bit of that, so that you can know when things are looking a little fishy, if, checks and balances and things. If you're riding a wire, you want to be able to know if something looks weird or if something feels weird. So those are good skills to have. A lot of those are developed over time, being in projects, on projects. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to speak, actually. What do you think is going to be your next movie that you'll work on? That's a good question. I was just saying, I was supposed to work on The Odyssey, which is a Christopher Nolan movie that's shooting right now and has been shooting for the last like 4 or 5 months all over the world. I was not able to work on that because of my tattoos. Oh, I do have work coming up. I have 2 days on a show called Judgment Day, which is a Will Ferrell movie, I think. I'm supposed to work in June on that. So that's the next movie that I'm going to work on next month. All right, guys, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys being here. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. That would be dope.